Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
What were they thinking? How many times have you said this when dealing with warehouse management software? It's almost like they didn't ask us logistics people what we want in a system. Well, I have a new WMS for you that's made by logistics people for logistics people. Carton Cloud is an integrated WMS and TMS that can streamline operations and orders from warehouse to transport with ease and accuracy. Built by people who have been in the trenches just like you and me and understand what a warehouse needs to operate. Carton Cloud brings you simplicity, great user interface, and easy implementation in days, not weeks, not months, but days. How awesome is that? With no locked-in contract needed, you can try Carton Cloud right now with a 25% discount for the first 3 months by mentioning the new warehouse or heading to the link in our show notes. Get a free demo at cartoncloud.com to see for yourself. That's cartoncloud.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Adam Downing. He is the president at Tryon Solutions, which is focused on WMS implementation and all things WMS. So we're going to talk about, of course, WMS. So he knows a thing or two, I think, about warehouse management systems. So we're going to find out a little bit about Tryon Solutions, but also talk a little bit too about, what's happening in the WMS world right now, and also how WMS providers and software companies are kind of adapting and changing how they look at their software suites and solutions to keep up with today's rapidly expanding and advancing technology, both in automation and robotics and some other things as well. So Adam, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Definitely happy to have you on. Happy to talk about this. It's hard to have a warehouse without a WMS. So definitely a very good topic to talk about on this podcast. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Tryon Solutions and what it is that you guys do?
Yeah, Tryon Solutions, we've been in business for almost 14 years now. We primarily have been, for the whole time, been primarily focused around the Blue Yonder WMS implementations and related products. But we are a global reseller for Blue Yonder. We also do a lot of consulting and have products all over the world. We are based in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have folks all over the U.S. that work with our team. And then we also have an office over in India. So we have teams that cover globally. And mostly our practice is around implementations, upgrades, operational improvements, testing, support. And, we do lots of go-lives every year for a handful of customers. We did 39 last year in 2022. We've also built a few software products over the years. Most recently, we spun off actually a WMS-specific test automation platform. And that's about Tryon Solutions in a nutshell.
All right. Very cool. And definitely very interested to hear from you as you've done so many go-lives. 39 is a lot. Definitely, there's some war stories there, I'm sure. I definitely have some in my experience being on the user side for Go Live, right?
For sure.
But
it was a busy year.
Yeah, I can imagine. So tell us a little bit about, as you're working with multiple different customers, obviously, right, with these go lives and, trying to bring them WMS and get them, more updated or modernized in their solutions and the software that they're using. When you look at the landscape now within our industry, I mean, what's really happening with warehouse management softwares at the current moment? What's really the big thing that's happening?
Yeah, a lot of our projects right now are really centered around either robotics and automation. So how do you deploy those? Also, and particularly, how do you manage all these labor issues we seem to have in the market?
Yeah.
And of course, everybody, depending on the size of the operation, are trying to get efficiencies and optimizations there. There's also a big push among the software business to go from on-prem to SaaS solutions. So,
right.
Typically, we primarily work in like the tier one warehouse space. So, there's this big push to move to SaaS, which is kind of threatening to some large enterprise IT departments, but also it's become more welcoming, more accepted. And it's also interesting for the ops folks because now they can kind of take more ownership as opposed to using their internal IT teams to deploy these systems. So we work a lot with Blue Yonder. They have a SaaS solution now. They support everything, all the back end pieces to it.
Yeah.
And Tryon will do the implementation, but also like the ongoing middle support of keeping you upgraded annually. Supplemental IT support for your super users to call if you say, hey, this order needs to go out, we're having issues getting it out, rather than call your internal IT team. They just call us. We understand the software, we can do it. Also, just the ongoing maintenance of not only the WMS test solution, but also the ancillary solutions like your ERP. So, hey, you're going to upgrade SAP. Well, we need help testing the components that go through the WMS. So whether that be manual or automated, we do all that. So it's really an interesting landscape right now. It's certainly changing. I mean, SaaS WMS solutions are not a new thing, but certainly on the enterprise level, they are becoming more and more adopted because, as you can imagine, you don't want folks standing around your warehouse when there's a system issue, if you will. So
right.
It's kind of good for all because now you have people who know what they're doing at all levels to keep things running for your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've certainly, as a warehouse manager, I've been on that end, lighting up IT when the system goes down because people are standing around, right? It's definitely, you don't want to lose that time. And it's really important to stay up and keep things running. So it's great that you're able to provide that support and help those operations to be able to do that. So you mentioned in there the automation and robotics portion, which, is such it's pretty much, everywhere in our industry now. It's a very, very hot topic, has been for the past couple of years. And lots of companies are now looking at getting automation or have already put automation into play and are looking at making those investments. So I guess tell us first, on this side that, I think oftentimes there's the allure and maybe some shiny object syndrome as well that, this robot looks cool or something like that. Like that's the one I need. But underlying that is a whole software component as well. So tell us how important is putting the right WMS in place to foundationally be able to build out that automation portfolio or bring robotics into my operation? Yeah.
So, we have really robotics continues to grow and continues to expand, and we see more and more of it. Go to the shows, and that's all you see, for the most part, it's taken over.
Yeah.
So we just have this ever-changing landscape of what things we can do with robots. But, and as we work with customers, it's really about how do you integrate this into your operation. And, at the fundamental robots you see out there, those, just doing pallet moves, helping with picking, helping with put away, those sorts of things. And from a WMS perspective, you're just automating things that are in your work queue, and rather than assigning it to a person, you're assigning it to a robot. So, but a lot of that still boils down into how do you implement it and do the industrial engineering to build that into your operation.
Yeah.
Again, fundamentally, you're just really moving product from one place to another within the four walls of warehouse. And while, not all WMSs have, out of the box connectivity, that's really the biggest challenge that our customers see is how do you integrate these various technology solutions with your existing WMS system? And that's usually the challenge that is the most difficult to work through because, as long as you can keep it simple, then it's not too hard to do. There's plenty of out of the box solutions that will work for you. when you start getting creative and saying, like many of our customers say, well, our warehouse is different than every other one, then then you got to work through those and navigate that. But there's plenty of great middleware options if the robotics vendor doesn't have, out of the box solutions that we worked with that can work pretty quickly and get you going.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, so in that sense, I mean, if a company like, especially now that I think we're seeing where robotics companies, automation companies are figuring out pricing structures and models that make it more accessible to that small to medium sized shipper, versus where, a couple of years ago, like it was really only like attainable by, some of the giants out there, right, to be able to really kind of invest that money into this type of thing. As they're starting to come online and have greater accessibility to this stuff, I mean, a lot of, small, medium-sized shippers have also probably had a WMS for, how many years in place, the same system. Are you seeing that there is a need to upgrade WMSs in order to work and be able to communicate with some of these automation solutions, as you mentioned, assigning the work to the robots versus the humans? I mean, is there a need to update your WMS to be able to do these types of things, or are some of these older legacy systems still able to handle some of this newer technology that's coming into play?
Yeah, the older versions of the applications we continue to support all of these enterprises, these WMS systems can probably work with any of the robotics vendors out there with the right, either out of the box or with some middleware that will help you do it. However, as we kind of look at the whole, IT ecosystem that exists at companies today, this push to the cloud is really, really important. And it's a good shift because it maintains reliability, but it also reduces your customer risk. And, as you alluded to, also, how do you stay current? And a lot of the software vendors want you to push to your more, whatever their latest release is. Let's get everybody on the same release. So that's a slow moving target. It's been, of course, an objective for many years for the various software vendors out there. How you get there is still a slow roll, just getting everybody to buy into that vision and how you maintain it. Because a lot of times we set these systems up, and once things are good and going, don't touch them because things could break if you don't fix what's not broken.
Right.
But it's still a good solution, and like the robotics vendors also. You asked about like smaller operations to big ones. A lot of these robotics vendors are offering, value sales where you lease the robot just like or not lease, but it could be based on how many are in your fleet and that sort of thing, and you just rent them by the month and the entire solution that goes along with it. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think, it's interesting to see, like, there's certainly, I think very much, like you said, let's not fix what's not broken, right? It's kind of that mentality, I think is runs kind of through our industry in a lot of places, I think. And it's interesting to see now that, just so much technology is coming in, like, it's really pushing to say like, hey, let's, update these things. Let's move from, an on-prem solution to the cloud-based, as you mentioned. So tell us a little bit about kind of that cloud-based versus the on-premise solution. I guess maybe for people that aren't familiar, what's first, like, what's the difference there? And then also what are, some of the benefits of going to a cloud-based system additionally?
Sure. So on-premise to us means you install it on your hardware or your cloud, and you maintain it. You have your IT teams, your database administrators, make sure that the system is running the way it should. And ultimately, the customer, whoever is responsible for installing it, is maintaining it. Now, those can be outsourced to third-party vendors that will also do that. But whereas you look at a managed SaaS solution with a WMS vendor, this is the vendor that's selling you the software, understands the ins and outs of it. They'll host it for you and they manage it. It may be at a premium of a price, but from a reliability standpoint, you figure in a large operation, a few hours of downtime in a warehouse with a few hundred people standing around could be very costly. So, maybe there's a lot of value to it. So it's really all about risk is really the assessment. In addition, on the SaaS side, once you get to a SaaS solution, and what we're seeing a lot is not only do you have the WMS now off of your plate and into someone else's responsibility and realm of monitoring it and helping you with it, It's also a lot of ancillary solutions you can add on to it. So if you think about, and we call them, I guess, microservices that are coming out in the industry. So while maybe you have middlewares to integrate to automation, we may have, what the software will do out of the box. Let's say just work queue management. You have a queue of work that needs to be done, picks, replenishments, pallet moves, receiving, putaways. Now, there's better services out there who can maybe take a different look at it that will optimize your labor costs and save even more money, that you could bolt onto it easily, one in a cloud solution versus an on-prem solution. So as technology continues to grow, we have this really very interesting changing landscape of a lot of things you can add on to your existing solution and just build on top of it. But SaaS is usually the best place to start because it's available over the internet. It's on the cloud. You can, of course, build protections around it, but it's out there. It's just a little bit more easy to access from other solutions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's, definitely some of the benefits there of the cloud-based, where you said like there's more flexibility to add in, additional components to that as needed. But I think one of the other things too is, tell us a little bit about from like an upgrade standpoint and being able to update your system. I think if it's cloud-based, it's a lot easier to update to newer versions. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we like to work with like Blue Yonder's WMS implement. We can work with their teams to easily update because they have folks who do these upgrades all day long, every day, as opposed to, some of the folks who have on-prem solutions. They're not updating every year. They're going to upgrade once every 5 years. So that jump from 5 years ago to the current version is a lot bigger of a step, and more risk is involved there. So your operations. So a lot of times those upgrades are more larger projects than opposed to the initial one, to just an incremental upgrade every year where you just make the minor changes that are necessary and then adjust accordingly.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it makes sense to be able to do that, especially as so much is changing in the landscape, as you were mentioning in there. And I think being able to update and upgrade easier is certainly a better thing to do. So, you talked about the go live, and I mentioned certainly some war stories from go lives and things like that. I've been part of some good ones, and then some ones that didn't go so well too in my career. But implementation and go live has always been, I think, sometimes like a scary word for some people in the industry, right? Because either they've had something that's gone wrong or it's not really gone as expected when everything gets turned on. But talk to us a little bit about how kind of implementations and go lives have gotten better and also gotten easier through test automation and how that works.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, test automation, we kind of went down a journey and built a tool many years ago, mostly specifically around testing WMS. As companies have matured and as these solutions exist, we hear this whole ecosystem. Most companies have a whole ecosystem of different solutions that they integrate together, and they have teams that just do testing all day long. So I guess the important thing to do is know that test automation, for example, in particular doesn't necessarily make your go live easier, but it makes your ongoing maintenance more robust and reliable. Again, always about mitigating risk, right? So whether you're upgrading or managing a warehouse management system or an ERP or some other tool that you have integrated, whether your order management system or your TMS, these are all a whole ecosystem that all talk to each other. And it's important to make sure that you can do end-to-end testing if you have a large ecosystem. Now, for a small, 1 or 2 site customer, they don't need test automation. It's probably just much more efficient to test, with a team as you do these upgrades. But also depending on how often you're upgrading. So test automation is a great tool, but it does need to be a solution fit, and also it needs to encompass more the entire IT ecosystem. From the time that order comes in off the website to the time it's shipped out the door to the time a credit card's charged, that sort of thing. Because probably half of our issues we'll see when go lives happen is really the integration failures, because it's maybe coming from upstream, the order drops wrong or something like that. So but test automation is certainly a way to, again, mitigate risk, but we see it as a tool in the ongoing maintenance.
So, I mean, in that sense, is it, not only mitigating risk, but is it decreasing the amount of time it's taking to actually get to a go live?
Right. Well, we look at it as, again, it should be still a tool. Like I think a lot of our customers can probably attest to the time that the IT team called and said, hey, can you pick these orders in our test system? And now you're taking managers in the warehouse floor and asking them to manually push orders through a test system. We look at automating those tasks as the high priority things and how you use test automation, because again, you're not always just upgrading WMS. You're probably upgrading other systems as well throughout the life cycle of your company. WMS may happen once a year, but you may have other upgrades that are going on throughout the year. That's up to your IT teams that are supporting the customer. So,
interesting.
The picking, the put away, those sorts of tasks where involve stuff coming in from the ERP or from another system, those are what you want to automate. We have customers now who can drop orders from SAP into WMS. It picks and packs the order, ships it out, confirms it back to the ERP, and they don't have to involve their ops teams for help, or a different a test. The testing team do it on their own.
Right. Yeah. And that kind of takes out that additional resource that is needed, which I think is a big help too from an operations perspective. Certainly.
Yeah, we sometimes see these in a silo where the SAP or your Oracle or whoever your ERP is doing an upgrade on their own. They forget to call over and say, hey, we tested 3 orders, so that should be enough, right? And then go live happens and things start getting a little haywire at the warehouse, and that's when the data becomes reality, when boxes start showing up on the shipping dock that are wrong.
Test 3 orders and then try to ship several hundred on the first day. It doesn't,
and realize that
work.
We probably should have done a little bit more than that. But
whoops. Absolutely. So I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to have that tool certainly in your toolbox and be able to do that type of thing to mitigate that risk, like you said, and really understand and take advantage of not sucking up too many resources, which oftentimes gets cut back or doesn't get as much attention as it needs. So to be able to do that test automation, I think goes a long way in having that success.
Not to say that manual testing is still a thing. I mean, you can't, you print a label out, you still want to look at the label, make sure it's still proper and what you're expecting, and reports, packing lists, these sorts of things that come out. All the edge cases, we call them, that are still important to test as part of any upgrade or any implementation.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about just kind of what's happening in the WMS world overall, and we talked about automation and robotics and how that comes into play with communication into the WMS and then the cloud versus on-prem. But if we look to the future beyond what's currently happening, what do you think the future looks like in terms of warehouse management systems, and where is that part of the industry kind of heading?
Well, I think as we look across all industries, labor is certainly an interesting question. How do you optimize, the use of your team? Labor management systems continue to be very popular with our customers and implementing those. Of course, robotics seems to get better and better and, adaptable. So you're streamlining your operations with, cost savings, or just even assisting your existing labor with taking a lot of the physical tasks and minimizing it so your people are not so tired at the end of the day. Also, we see, other providers like, I think Phantom Auto was a big popular one at the last few years at the shows, that they're, remotely driven, forklifts. That's pretty cool. So now you can put a warehouse outside of New York City, but have someone in Arkansas driving it, or another country, maybe outside of the U.S. could actually be doing all the work. So very interesting things out there. Again, we talked a little bit about microservices. I think that's a really good market that we'll see a lot of growth in. You're seeing a lot of third-party customers, or companies implementing with customers to, build on. While the WMS may do one task okay, these other companies can do it a lot better. So that's interesting. It's all about, optimizing. And as we see, AI seems to be going into everything. Who knows where that will take us?
Yeah.
But I'm sure that will be a lot of interesting new tool sets and things that can come out of that as that continues to become a more mainstream option. So who knows? I'm not smart enough to figure that out yet. So, but we'll continue to keep watching.
Yeah. I mean, do you see that AI will come into like a WMS and kind of play a critical role there within the system at some point?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have some sort of solutions. AI does a lot of, you can do, I'm just making things up, but analytics to figure out how to optimize things in the warehouse. Maybe, what you can do with a human, what a human could do with a lot of time on their hands to figure out how you make things better. Maybe AI can do a lot in a few seconds.
Right.
So, I'm thinking that maybe slotting or something like that, maybe the first big AI thing to figure out what's not only fast moving, but how do I actually, but if I look at a warehouse map, does it make sense? And these sorts of things. So I have no doubt we'll see some of that stuff coming down the pipe in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Which would be really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And slotting, I think, is a big one too. I've done a lot of slotting projects manually, and that takes a very long time.
That takes aggregating a lot of data and figuring things out, and something that as soon as you do it and 5 days later, maybe
it's different.
Then maybe that's where AI can step in and help us. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a great thing. So very interesting to talk to you about all things WMS, Adam, and interesting to learn about Tryon Solutions as well. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about the WMS world. If people are interested in learning more about Tryon Solutions or getting in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, definitely our website, tryonsolutions.com, TRYON solutions.com is probably the best way to find us.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put all that information on thenewwarehouse.com as well so people can easily find it. So, Adam, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.